my name's Nita and welcome to my video. Today in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this arrow themed top quilt. So this top quilt is going to be used to create a tribal themed nursery blanket for my son's nursery room. This is going to be a 3-part series. This is the first video, so make sure and stay tuned for the second and the third video so I can show you how to complete the full nursery blanket. Make sure if you liked this video to give it a like, and if you want to see the next video on how to do the back of the quilt, make sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any suggestions or comments that you'd like to leave, make sure you leave them down in the comment section. But let's go ahead and let's get started on this top quilt. I'm going to be using 5 different patterns for this project. I got all these patterns from Joann's. The only one that I'm really worried about is this white fabric, just because it's super thin compared to these other 4. So I'm hoping that while I'm sewing that this fabric doesn't rip or tear. I kind of regret getting this one, even though I just love the pattern. The thickness of it is a big concern, so we'll see how it turns out. For each piece of fabric, I'm going to cut about a 1/2 inch off of the edges because as you can see, the edges have some frays and the edges aren't completely straight. So before I start cutting, I also want to make sure that the pattern itself is matching and that it's not crooked, because we are going to be cutting squares, so we don't want the print to be crooked. So I cut off the edges, about a 1/2 inch, and now I'm going to cut 6 inches worth of fabric and 5.5 inches worth of fabric. There's my 6 inches, and then I'm also going to cut 5.5 inches now. So again, I have my 6 inches, my 5.5 inches. The 6 inches is going to be for the triangles, and the 5.5 inches are going to be used for squares. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all the fabric and cut off the ends, a 6-inch piece and a 5.5-inch piece. Here I have my 5.5-inch strip. Each strip does have a white marking at the end of it. So I'm going to cut this piece off. This is about 1/2 inch. For each of the dark patterns, I'm going to cut 3 squares. So 3 5.5-inch squares and 3 6-inch squares. For the white, I did make the mistake. You are going to have to cut 12 of the white into 6 inches and 12 of the white in 5.5 inches. The thing that you need to remember when cutting these squares is to take your time. This is like my least favorite part of quilting, but just make sure that you are taking your time when doing this. I'm all done with my cutting now, so I cut, for my 6-inch squares, I cut 3 each of the dark colors and 12 of the white, and same for my 5.5-inch squares, I cut 3 of the dark and 12 of the white squares. Here are just a few of the things I'll be using to make the triangles for the quilt. I'm going to take my 6-inch squares and have 1 white and 1 of the dark colors and place them face to face. Then I'm going to take a ruler and draw a line from corner to corner diagonally. Now you can use a fabric marker, but I can't find mine, so I just used a ballpoint pen. Using my sewing machine and a 1/4 inch foot, I will just follow against the blue line, and then without breaking the thread, I just lift my foot and continue on the other side. Then I'm going to press each of the squares, front and back. So using your 5.5-inch squares now and your triangles, you are going to create a pattern. So for the first row, you're going to use the white square and a triangle square next, and continue that pattern. And for the top row, you should have 6 squares altogether. Now I noticed that the triangles for the top row were facing the wrong direction. You want to make sure that the dark triangles are facing downward for the top row. Now for the second row, you're going to use a triangle square and your dark colored squares. You're going to start with a triangle square having the dark triangle facing upward, and then your next square will be a dark color that matches the triangle. And here is my first 2 rows. Now I'm just going to go ahead and sew each square together. Make sure that you have the pattern facing each other. So after sewing all of the squares together, I'm just going to go ahead and continue sewing the rectangles now. And then I'll have to press each of the strips, front and back. And then I'm just going to continue on with the rest of my rows. So I finished sewing all the squares to create strips, and then I pressed each strip. So all I have to do now is just take each strip and sew them together. Then I will be done with my top quilt. Here is my first row of arrows. Now I just need to press this, but I'm going to go ahead and finish sewing the rest of these together, and then I'll press each one. So here is the finished product of the top quilt. I absolutely love how it turned out.